I am about to drop the craziest JoJo Solos lore ever. And if my voice sounds a little weird, it's because I'm recording this live on twitch.tv/jojosolos during a subathon because it was a sub goal, but it doesn't matter. How did I get into content creation? And how did I grow to the point that I am today? Well, the lore behind how I got into content creation is actually pretty basic because I was watching YouTube ages ago, just like everyone else when YouTube was first like kind of blowing up with the gaming industry, and I got addicted to Minecraft. I loved watching Minecraft. I loved Legos, so once you see like a virtual version of Legos, like I totally locked in. And the first video of Minecraft I ever watched was Paul Soares Jr. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Paul Soares Jr. Paul Soares Jr. was literally showcased on the Minecraft.net website. That's what it was back in the day. It would literally show how many downloads Minecraft had at the time, and then right under it, there would be a Paul Soares Jr. video of how to survive and thrive in Minecraft. And oh my gosh, I locked in. He put the seed that he used in the description, and he recorded everything. So I eventually, when I got Minecraft, I used the same seed. I logged into my world, and then at nighttime I logged off, and I never opened that world again because I was horrified of the zombie sounds. But I loved watching Paul Soares Jr. He did an entire series of literally just existing. He would build his things, and I would watch all of that, and eventually I started watching Chimney Swift. Shout out Chimney Swift, yo. Love Chimney Swift. And I just saw like all the potential with content creation with that. I just really enjoyed watching a lot of old school YouTubers. I didn't really think about doing it myself until I was watching someone like a PewDiePie or, whoever else was the OGs back in the day. I gotta be careful whose names I say. Okay, nowadays some of these people are kind of cringe. But anyway, yeah, I decided I wanted to start making videos of my own. But it was mostly because I love the way that Paul Soares Jr. and Chimney Swift did their thing. And eventually, I got into multiplayer Minecraft. So like not the survival aspect, not the single player world stuff. I got into Mineplex, the Hive, Hypixel, like the really OGs. I mean, Hypixel still exists, but like the really fun servers back in the day. And I was obsessed with Dragon Escape and all these different games that were just fun and entertaining. And I actually started YouTube a lot longer ago before my current YouTube, and it was a lot of just this multiplayer games, and even sometimes just me randomly drawing. Like I knew I wanted to do YouTube, but I was just kind of doing whatever. Anyway, eventually my parents found out about that other YouTube I had, and they told me to shut it down, and so I deleted it, and it's gone forever. R.I.P. to Jamham. Yep, there's the name. There's one video that exists on the internet of that, and it's because I did like a collaboration video with some other channel, but anyway, that's totally besides the point. That's kind of how I got into content creation. Just a lot of inspiration from other people, and of course, the game is fun. I love Minecraft. Hypixel really gave me everything I needed to have fun and think maybe I could just have fun with my friends. And then eventually, when I made my current YouTube channel, which started as Potato Craft, I don't even want to talk about the names and why I named them that, but I was having a lot of fun with it. I was doing like Dragon Escape, I was doing it, Sky Wars, all the different things, and just having fun with friends. Eventually, UHC started happening. But the important question in this commentary is, how did I grow the community? Because in reality, at the end of the day, if you're pumping out content, if you're making YouTube videos or if you're streaming and you have 0 views, that is so defeating. That is like next level. Like you can only do it for so long. You can only do it for so long. And obviously, I'm still here 10 plus years later. So how did I eventually grow my community? I think it actually just starts a lot with having friends that are willing to also watch your content, and just having friends or people who are also inspired in or motivated in the content creation world. And back then I would literally just, Discord didn't exist, but we had Skype, we had TeamSpeak, or I would just chat with people in game, and I'd just be like, yo, like, who wants to play a game? Or I don't know. I would also maybe have like some IRL friends who would know about it, and they'd do what they can. But eventually, when you find other people who are also just as motivated and they're starting to grow as well, I hate to say it, but it is a lot about collaborating. And unfortunately, that is exactly what it is to this day. I'd love to say that, oh, you just need to be like a really great creator and have like the perfect quality. Well, it's not always that. It's not always that. There's a lot of networking that comes into content creation, especially streaming. Like, I feel like when I'm saying all of this, streaming is like the hardest part because it's impossible to grow with absolutely nothing. YouTube is a little bit different. If you start slapping videos out there, eventually YouTube's going to recommend that video to someone and it might hit the algorithm and it'll benefit you maybe. But that one's a little bit more of a gamble. And nowadays YouTube is very different than what it used to be back in the day. Back in the day, I was making episode 432 of survival games. So, YouTube nowadays is very different, and it does ultimately come down to finding ways to pump out content on YouTube, and then on Twitch, you have to collaborate. You have to find people that you can have fun with. It doesn't even need to be a collaboration with other streamers. As long as if you're sitting in a call with other people who make you goofy and like you're just hilarious, like it's a good time. People see that. People actually see when you're having a good time. And I think that that's more value than the actual game content. Obviously, taking into account like what games you're playing and stuff. Like now I'm getting a little bit analytical, right? Taking into account like what games you're playing. If you're playing a game that's, I don't know, 20 years old and nobody plays anymore, maybe it's going to be a little bit harder to grow as a content creator in that regard because maybe there's not a lot of people playing that game. In another, I guess, angle though, sometimes that may make you the only person streaming that game, and then in fact you grow a community out of that. But anyway, back to how I grew my community. As I was growing my community, obviously it had a lot to do with who I was friends with and the type of content that we were all making. But ultimately, what I was discovering throughout time was myself and who I was. And projecting my whole life on the internet, basically since I was 14, really helped me discover myself. And as I was discovering myself, I knew what sort of community I wanted to have. So even though I was still a growing channel, if I would have someone cringe in my Twitch chat or in my YouTube comments, I would just delete it. I would ban them. I don't care if it would cost me a viewer, because ultimately I wanted to have a community of people who I could enjoy chatting with, and I valued that so much more than having a bigger number in my viewership or in my YouTube videos. And of course, it helped quite a lot during the Among Us era, because the Among Us era obviously was like the ultimate collaboration time. You get in a lobby of 10 different people, and you kind of have a lot of opportunity to grow, and people start to see what type of person you are when you play these games. Obviously, Among Us, it's a bit of a social deception game, so it doesn't fully show who you truly are, but in a way it shows your humor and it shows how you tend to play video games. And it was definitely a time on the internet, but it was a good time, and it was a great time for people to really collaborate. And I think that was the main way for people to realize that collaboration is so important when it comes to content creation. And it sounds a little bit weird to say it like that, because at the end of the day, some people are like, isn't that just leeching? But it's not that. Like, if you're playing with your friends, it is completely different than if you're like constantly messaging people you don't know who are like 10x the size of you and like trying to get in on that. Like, I don't know. Back then, for me, this wasn't my full-time job either. And this was just kind of like a passion, thing. I was in college. I had a job. This was completely on the sidelines for me. And it grew a lot, especially from Among Us. And then MCC even helped with growth, especially with the Minecraft community. But the most important part is I always maintained my guidelines of what sort of community I wanted to grow. So even though I was getting a lot of eyes on my channel, I wanted to make sure that my community was as open, safe, and just accepting as it could be. Because throughout all of this is when I also discovered myself. And, it was literally college time where I decided, well, not decided, but like I kind of gave myself a label. I didn't really have a label of like, you know, I knew I had a girlfriend at the time, so I knew there was something up with me, but I didn't know exactly what was up. And it was during college when I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm pan, and that's what it is. And I don't know, making sure that I had a community that was accepting and I don't know, just as wonderful as it is now was so important. It was so important for me to get to where I am. So I don't know. I guess that's kind of how I grew the community and made sure that it stayed kind of in the right tracks. I think sometimes people get a little bit excited in, you know, any sort of attention, but sometimes it can be bad attention and it sucks and it hurts sometimes. But as long as you kind of set your foot down on exactly what it is that you want, eventually you'll get to it. If you put in the time and effort, of course. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this. I hope this lore drop was kind of cool. And yeah, this was pretty weird recording it live on Twitch. Happy Pride now. Goodbye.